Hello, everybody. Welcome to Eating Peace this week. Working with a lot of people on solo sessions and also in some of the programs and on retreat, one thing I notice commonly reoccurs and appears in people's stressful thinking is their thoughts about their mother. How has your mother influenced your relationship with food and eating, your life with food and eating, your experience of being in a body? There's almost always a connection, whether your mother was present a lot or not. I have so many memories, but one really interesting and vivid one that occurred to me the first time I was ever asked about the influence of my mother or noticing that was remembering that I was on a family trip that did not include my father or sisters. My aunt was there, my mother was there, and we were going swimming. I had a fairly new bathing suit. I was so happy that I actually could have handled even going in the store and purchasing a bathing suit because it used to make me sick. I was so filled with loathing about my body and my body image, what I looked like, what was going on there. I had managed to find a bathing suit that I liked and the color that I liked, and I still remember it. It was a one piece, and it came down and then had like a dark or deep kind of azure blue lining, and then it had a little hole, just a round sort of centered hole right below the breastbone, and then it continued on in kind of a speckled blue with white on it. I don't know, I still remember how pretty it was. Maybe a little bit like the backdrop I have. I love that color. So I came out with this new bathing suit on. Hot summer, we're going to go into a swimming pool. And my mother said, "Oh my God, I am so proud of you." And I was so mixed with confusion and irritation. Like, what business do you have commenting on my body? You're proud of me for having a bathing suit on, for having this body. I just had all these assumptions. I was completely shut down. I was totally quiet, and I was just almost kind of sick to my stomach. The commentary on my body and someone else's opinion, like my mother's, on my body, I felt like was so old, and I was so angry about it and upset. At the time, the age that I was probably in my 20s. But I just felt like I come out wearing a bathing suit, which means you hardly have any clothing on, and somebody tells me how proud they are of me, and it feels so body oriented. I was furious. That is a moment with my mother, and honestly, if you think about it, the comment is supportive or it's praise, and I was still furious. I didn't like it. So it is just interesting to allow your mind to go ahead and find moments that you remember that felt really stressful. And it does not have to make logical sense or anything. It's just noticing what's there and what appears around mother. Of course, the first anxiety I ever had in my life that people can go off with food and eating was hearing my mother be upset about her own body and her own weight and her going to Weight Watchers. There was these things that she was going to, and they were called Weight Watchers. So she was gone for the evening, which is unusual. So my dad was staying home with us. I was about 8 years old at that time. I also then went on a diet with my mother when I was 14 and pretty much grew about 4 inches that year because I was still growing in the final growing stages and gained 0 weight. So I sort of stretched out and had people commenting. Those were just interesting initial memories, but I'm already swimming in the belief system because it's also validating out there in the world what you learn and what you hear and what it's like to sit with thoughts that your mother has, and she's a human being, and then see what shows up about the world. Sometimes people share with me that about their mother has cooked and cooked all this food, and they can't say no to their mother. They're okay in the world from day to day, kind of, in their weight. But when they go to dinner and their mother has cooked, they can't say no. They can't stop eating. Sometimes people have thoughts about feeling criticized in the presence of their mother, even though their mother's not saying anything. There's just an old assumption. So, in any case, just noticing your mother voice that is in your head now, that has got things to say about food and eating and your body, and they are not happy things. They're critical and they're difficult things. You can let all this out on paper. You can write this down. Everything that you couldn't stand about your mother's ideas around food and eating and what she taught you. I am resentful with my mother because she didn't have her act together about food and eating. She taught me that women were supposed to look a certain way and constantly commented about the necessary beauty that was, hoped for in being female. Just keep it going. Just let yourself flow. Just let it be, let it rip, unedited, childish, ridiculous. You might know immediately while you're saying it that that's not true anymore and it's mean, or your mother isn't even alive anymore to be saying this. But just let yourself have those thoughts, because to bring them out and write them down is a way to kind of pin them down. Like they're all blowing in the wind all the time anyway. There's all this muck and mess and churning and stress and anxiety and discomfort around food and eating and being present in a body and having a body that's being seen by the world. And if you just let those concepts flow through you one by one, they'll be right there. Just make a list. You don't even have to be, if you know the work of Byron Katie, you don't even have to be as detailed as writing a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. Just start to write. Have it be a journal. Speak out loud. What thoughts did your mother teach you about food and eating? What beliefs did she model for you? Maybe she was dieting. Maybe she was looking in the mirror and saying bad things about her, the way she looked that day. These are really interesting comments and ideas and concepts to look at that shape your feeling, because most of us feel incredibly close to Mother. We feel brought into this world by Mother. Whether even if she was no longer with us very soon afterwards, we wonder about that, like this process of being held and accompanied or nurtured. So one thing that has been powerful for me when it comes to Mother is to look at our ideal version of mothering. If you were mothered and had the best mother in the world and the most fabulous mother ever that you can ever imagine, what would that mother be like, look like, feel like, act like? What would she speak like? And just noticing the gap between that ideal mother and the one you've got. And just being so sure, I would just be so sure that if I didn't have the one that spoke this way, I would have never been bulimic in the first place. It's really holding a lot of intensity in one person, but just let it be there. So we're not going to even question that. Just something about this image of Mother and how Mother held me and what it was like to be mothered that is very strong and very powerful when it comes to eating. Just incredibly powerful. Sometimes I think if you only identified and questioned your beliefs about Mother, your mother, you might be able to heal your eating disorder. I don't know if that's for sure true, but they're pretty strong. It's pretty intense. It's pretty penetrating into the mind. It's like a building block that everything rests on in many ways around food and eating. And then you just begin to find evidence in the world for how the world also supports what your mother thought or seems to be like your mother in some particular way. Mother Earth, we say Mother Earth. It's like the world is like Mother. And so just looking at those thoughts we have about Mother, are there any parallels? Is there anything that's the same? some people tell me frequently when I work with people one-on-one, they had their first diet ever, their first controlled amount of food was from mother. Mother put them on a diet. Mother got them diet pills. Mother went on a diet with them, or mother was talking about needing to diet. Maybe mother was saying she needed to diet, but it's the first time we often learn about a need to control what we're eating. But you don't have the intuitive sense or the power to just trust what you're eating and when you're full and when you're hungry and what's right for you. You have to manage it and control it and follow a set plan and follow the rules and get this under control, and kind of just have a lack of trust about the experience of this relationship, this between food and me, between mother and me. So looking at mother, when you write all those thoughts down, you write everything down, they will be pinned down because there's words and concepts put to it. And the easiest way I have found to work with all these concepts and this story of mother and how painful it can be is to begin at the top of the list, one concept at a time, and take it through the inquiry process known as the work of Byron Katie. You know now that I love the work of Byron Katie because it's so simple, but not always so easy. One concept at a time. So if you have a thought like, she praised me for my body, not for my inner world, my inner life. She cared more about my body. That's what she was proud of, my appearance. And I resent it. You can look at, that's what she was proud of. In that moment, can I know that's true? That's question number one. Can I absolutely know that's true? That's what she was praising. That's what she was meaning when she said, I'm so proud of you. I have my moment. I have my memory. I actually don't know because I went quiet and I said nothing and I didn't ask her anything about it. I didn't say anything about it ever. Ever. Can I absolutely know that's true? No, not absolutely, with no shadow of a doubt. How do you react? Next question. How do you react when you believe this story? She only cares about appearance. She praises and attends to her daughter because of how they look. How do you react when you believe that thought? I noticed the way I reacted was with resentment, with a fighting feeling within of part of me wanting to rebel and say, I will never look like that then. I'm going to do what I want. And then another part that said, oh, you want thinness and you want this? Just watch this. And then going too thin. Just all kinds of furious, opposing feelings within and feeling very much like I didn't know what to do with my own anger, my own rebellion, treating myself poorly, treating my mother poorly. How do you react? Feeling very distant, very separated. How am I with food? Like a nutcase. Very demanding, and then very critical and very guilty, and the guilt just feeds more eating. You can spend some time on this question. You can be with it for several days. How do I react when I believe I'm praised for how I look? That's what she was doing in that moment. How do I react? What else has happened in my life? But then this fourth question, who would you be without that story? It's an act of imagination. Who would you be without that thought, without that belief? And only that one belief, not the whole story of your entire mother. We're only doing one concept at a time. That in that moment, in that situation, she was praising me only for how I looked, not for anything else. Who would I be without that thought? Pushing the pause button and remembering that moment, that experience. Who would you be without that story, which is a very painful story? I would just be noticing a woman. I can't even remember really what she looked like in the room, where she was standing, to be honest. What else was happening? Who else was there? I was so incredibly focused and centered on my appearance with this new bathing suit. I was almost like wild with anxiety just stepping out of the bathroom, the changing room. Very interesting. It's like there was just so much tension at the time. Who would I be without the thought? My mother was praising me for how I looked, and that was a bad thing. Very interesting. I can also hold that meditation for a few days, just wondering, who would I be? Who would I be without that thought? And I'm still watching the same situation and hearing the same words. I find I'm curious about that situation. What did you mean? Do you remember that, Mom? What was going on there? And if Mother isn't living anymore, to even ask her about a situation like this, just kind of going, I actually didn't know the whole story. I didn't have the picture. I don't remember. I'm just, even though I remember vividly, I cannot be sure about my story. And then, of course, the last step in the work is turning the thought around. I am praising myself for my own appearance, for my appearance only. And I'm not taking into consideration or caring about the inner part of me. Was that true in that moment? It sure was. I didn't say anything about my inner response. I didn't connect. I felt separated. I used it as proof for that only the way you look matters. Who was the one who was doing the believing about only my body image is what matters in the moment? Me. And this is very important, to not attack yourself for doing that. If I had known better, I would have known. I would have done it differently. I would have thought differently. I would have spoken up. I would have asked questions. I would have said, "Oh, when you say that, I'm not sure what you mean. Are you?" I would have connected. Another turnaround would be, my mother is not praising me only for how I look in that moment. Could be just as true. And a final turnaround would be, I am praising or criticizing my mother for one sentence that she made about my body. All that criticism and all that intensity and all that holding her responsible for my upsetting feelings and thoughts about having a body and needing it to look right. All on my mother. So this is just a brief example, and you can keep going, but start with that list. Brainstorm. I like how it's called brainstorm. Storming it all out, but writing it all down. And then starting at the top. It can take a while to look at the story of Mother and its link and connection with food and eating and what she taught or showed or modeled. But in the end, I find an incredible gratitude for that mother being exactly as she is, and also what I've learned and moved from because of this. It's possible to set yourself free from those stories and really sink into what mothering is and mother yourself. Because isn't that what we all need to do anyway? Even if you had the best mother on the entire planet who was fabulous around food and eating, which is unlikely, but what if that was true? Best mother ever, totally easygoing and great about food and eating and body image and all of it. Even if you had that kind of mother, you still need to mother yourself. Because we don't stay close to home like a little baby for our whole lives. We grow up. So how can I bring more mothering into my life today? You might find that the urgency to eat dissolves when you mother yourself with more intention and more self-care, more compassion, greater amount of love. All right, let me know how it goes.